A lot is going on in the world of politics, and we'll be talking about that here on World Politics. I know I've got Rick Rosner with me as well as Sasha Starr. We'll see if others join as well, but a lot's going on in the world, and a lot of people are paying attention to a number of news stories. Thousands are still searching for the missing there in Colombia as that earthquake is caused a lot of devastation, and all along those lines. And Trump is scoffing at Iran's demands for war reparations and other East development. So definitely Trump is in the news as well. And a former U.S. Marine held in Russia for more than 4 years on disputed charges has been released. So they released somebody that they were holding there in Russia for 4 years, much as they had held Brittany Griner way back when, but she wasn't held as long and all in that space. I'm very curious to hear what Sausage has to say about this because it looks like he has been released after having been in Russian jails for a number of charges. So the Russian released an American military veteran on Tuesday, allowing his return to the U.S. after 4 years, and what his family and U.S. officials alleged was wrongful incarceration and abusive treatment that left him near death. Robert Gilman, a 32-year-old Massachusetts teacher and former Marine, was freed after President Donald Trump said he spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin about his release, which Trump said was very much on a humanitarian basis. So we appreciate this decision and the fact that Russia asked for no one in return, no exchange took place, is what Trump said on Truth Social and all along those lines. So that's one of the political things that I'm seeing. But I'm gonna bring in Rick Rosner and Sasha Starr and see what other things they are seeing in the news and going on in the world and all along those lines. Because definitely when I saw that, I was going like, so we had a return and nobody had to be exchanged and everything like that. But on the
Well, in
opposite
the
side,
U.S.,
a family
it's
says a
crazy.
U.S. seismologist.
In the U.S., it's
What'd you say?
crazy time. We have 12 weeks until the midterms, and Trump says and does crazier crap every day because it looks bad for him. His approval right now is lower than it was immediately after he led the attack on the Capitol on January 6th. And his disapproval is also almost at an all-time high. And people are nervous he's going to do crazy crap to try to interfere in the election. He tried to get the SAVE Act passed, but the Senate is currently recessed, and so it can't get passed, and it doesn't have the votes anyway. But just the
Yeah,
next 3 months are going to be freaking ridiculous.
yeah, they can be crazy ridiculous. It looks like a family is saying that U.S. seismologist has been detained in China for nearly 2 years without a trial. So it looks like they're just grabbing folks left and right throughout the world and all along those lines. But yeah, Trump is doing all kinds of crazy things in that space and all along those lines. But yeah, there's a lot going on in that way and everything like that. It looks like over 16,000 civilians have been detained by Russia during the war in Ukraine, and they are still being held, is what the UN is estimated. So the United Nations estimates that more than 16 civilians detained by Russia during its war in Ukraine are still being held. So are these folks that Zelensky, not Zelensky, Putin is going to eventually put out into the make them soldiers and all along those lines? Or what is your take, Sasha? Because that's a lot of civilians. 16,000 is a lot, even though that's probably not represented some of the bigger cities. But they are saying that, and I also heard that they had recruited a lot of North Koreans to come and also serve as soldiers. So, what's your take on what's going on in that regard?
Well, I think that 60,000, most of them probably didn't obey the regime, and maybe they had their inclinations not to support the war against Ukraine. What about North Koreans? I don't think they will last for long. I think they will be all nullified. They will be all they will lose their lives for nothing really. but the problem is that Ukraine now has a superior technology which is already using on the front lines. They have the drones bringing the robots to the front lines, and these robots, they kill everything around them, and they are immune to, even if you will try to destroy it, it's almost indestructible. So it's a kind of a uh, new technology. I don't know, maybe somebody else has something similar, but nobody ever tried it on the front lines. Ukraine is the first one that successfully tries it, and they're getting all the benefits of this wonderful technology. So the Russians' losses are approaching million and a half.
Wow.
Can you imagine that? The U.S. lost in Second World War. U.S. lost
410,000.
410,000 in 4 years. Okay, Russia lost in the same 4 years, you may say, but million and a half. Fighting much smaller and
Well,
supposedly.
okay, the U.S. lost, that was just killed. I'm sure that you double that for wounded, but still double that again, and that's what you have Russian losses. So just to be clear, 16,000, not 60,000, 16,000 civilian prisoners, Ukrainians, kidnapped pretty much and held by Russia. 85% of them, when released, reported that they were tortured. So Russia is not following any of the rules of war.
Of course.
No.
So Ukraine is hitting Russia with 7 to 10,000 drones a day. They are doing an average of 343 robot missions per day. The robots are what you'd expect they'd look like. They're like little four-wheeled machines that I guess have guns and some other stuff, and they roll into the enemy forces, and then they just spray them with bullets. And they're doing 10,000 of these missions a month.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures and short movies about that. They are indestructible. They have enormous firepower. It's just second to none. So that I wish people would have more videos to see on this superior technology. Absolutely. And remember that Ukraine is not a very rich country, and it's not very big country, and yet they're coming with such innovations. What I don't understand, how Americans allow the army that cannot defeat anybody. They're losing all wars, starting from Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran now, and they're spending $1 trillion a year for this.
It's very annoying. It's terrible. So a Ukrainian robot, which rolls in, and a Ukrainian robot carries between 300 and 1,000 rounds of ammunition. So it rolls in there and it lets off hundreds and hundreds of rounds and kills everybody. So, and they cost between 2,000 and 40,000, with most of them average between 10 and 30,000 per unit, compared to us, where the U.S. military wants $1.5 trillion. That is 1.5 million suitcases, each containing $1 million. That's what the military says they for the price of. So you could get almost 1 billion of these freaking robots for $1.5 trillion.
Yeah, but to the point that Steve was making earlier, and like I said, we had that glitch with the YouTube and everything like that. But he did make this point, and I thought it was a valid point, that China seems to be winning the war without firing the shot because they are
Yes.
the ones that are developing a
Yeah,
lot of relationships and all along those lines. But I was just wondering if you could share a little bit more about that because definitely
yeah.
that is, I think, a
Mark, this
valid
is
point.
yeah. Mark, this is Steve Rao. I made that point this morning. We must be I can't look at you because I'm driving, but we
Yeah.
must be spending a lot of time virtually because that's exactly what I was talking about today. Do you mind if I have a comment on that?
Yes, please.
Yeah. And I'll be opening up next week, guys. I'm sorry I'm driving, so I couldn't do my opening monologue. But this was actually going to be a part of my monologue today. Mark Lee is exactly right. China is really watching this war closely and winning without firing a shot. Well, what does Mark Lee mean by that? Well, or what do I mean by that? Well, what we mean is that, first of all, they've been able to continue to maintain better relationships throughout the Middle East now because of this strategy of the United States, which is military strength and power over diplomacy. So Qatar, Oman, United Arab Emirates, even Iraq, they're bolstering better relationships with these countries. The other thing to realize is that, they've done a very good job of diversifying their economy. 70% of their dependency is still on foreign oil, but 30% of their economy is based on electricity for their energy consumption. So this means they've turned to coal, nuclear, electrification. So they've been able to manage this economically very well. And they're focusing, rather than wasting their money on wars, they're building their economy in AI and advancement and manufacturing. The other thing, Mark, I'll end with this. When you look at China, on them, right? Well, they said we're going to go to the find minerals, which now they actually refine those minerals and they find metals, and then they sell them. So they limited their exports of that to other countries. So China, they're not firing a shot, but I tell you, they're using this war to gain supremacy in the world order. And I think that's definitely something to talk about more on the show, is what does the new world order look like? And Sasha Star and I've talked about this a lot. It's just the United States wielding the big wand, we're pulverizing, we're doing this. Iran isn't backing down, China's not firing a shot, and it's military supremacy at all costs, not thinking through the diplomacy. Could be an issue for the Democrats in the presidential election.
It's economic warfare. China's foreign trade, $4.5 trillion in the first 7 months of the year. The U.S. does $300 billion a month, so they're roughly equivalent. But China is building, through the Belt and Road Initiative, is building all these it's being the world's friend. And one way they are the world's friend is they build trading relationships and infrastructure that make it easier for China to sell its goods overseas. And
right.
Exactly.
Sasha, what is your take on the new world order and everything like that? Because I know you've been really big on what the U.S. is not doing economically and everything like that, and I agree with you that there's a lot of people that can't afford to even rub two pennies together to get a loaf of bread and all along those lines. But for years we have been the world power, and I know David Walker says that we've lost a lot of power, but then you've had some disagreements with him as well. So I just wonder, what do you think the new world order is? Who's in charge now? Because the U.S. apparently is having some issues. Russia's in the middle of a war that they can't win and everything like that. So who are the world powers, and what is the new world order?
Well, normally a new world order is dictated by the winners of the major wars. So it was after the First World War, so same after Second World War. Now we are at the crossroads where Russia, being the largest country in the world, the nuclear power, cannot win its war against Ukraine. Simply can't. It's not going to be possible for next month, a year, 5 years. It doesn't matter. They cannot and will not be able to defeat Ukraine. Now, U.S.-Iran, same thing. The most powerful army in the world, financed at the tune of trillion and a half dollars, cannot defeat Iran? Wow. Why American taxpayers need the losers army that cannot win a single war anywhere except against Maduro in Venezuela? Why do you need this army, my American friends? Why you finance it for a tune of trillion and a half? That's beyond me. And even with this trillion and a half financing, this army is unable to defeat Iran. So Iran could be
Yes,
with
exactly.
China dictate, and Ukraine and Europe dictate a new world order. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And Fareed Zakaria had written a book. It was called American World Order. I mean, it was just post-war American strategy from war, and Zakaria talks in this book about that. But I mean, Sasha's brought up some good points. I mean, I think I'll end with this as I leave. I mean, I think it's very interesting how these global conflicts are now intertwined with all the issues we talked about. Energy. What do they do with national security? Well, we used to work with national security when we had the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we lived through that. But today, in our country, and it could be in other countries like Canada, national security is, what is the cost of my housing? What is the cost of my energy, my utility bills? What am I going to have a job tomorrow because AI is taking it? And what's happening in China with their AI strength is affecting us here in North Carolina. What's happening in Iran is the world with high energy prices. When I was in college, and Mark Lee and I talked about that, he's got a nephew starting in college, and my niece is starting, in a political science class in 1990s when I was at Emory, we looked at these things as different, categories. But now there's interconnectivity, right? And because it's easier to go to war, are we going to have multiple countries now getting into war because, hey, I can have drones and I can take on any country in the world? I think that's really where we are today, and I find it to be fascinating. Maybe I'll write a
I'd
new
like
book.
to add also that all these two wars, Ukraine, Russia, and United States, Iran, show that you don't necessarily need nuclear weapons to win the war against a much stronger and bigger opponent. That's really fantastic revelations. So now Army would have to take that into account.
The stakes in the Iran war are not that high. We went in there to Trump wanted an easy victory. Not going to get it. Not going to get anything if we just withdraw, which would be embarrassing and damage our prestige. What happens? What happens is Iran charges $1 million per super tanker going through the Strait of Hormuz. So oil is a little more expensive by like 1%. Is that a catastrophe? Not really. It just makes Trump look like a freaking idiot. And right now, the U.S. is run by, the U.S. should be winning at capitalism, except for being run by idiots. At the end of World War II, the U.S. had 50% of the world's manufacturing. We made half of the world's stuff. Now we're down to 16%, and China is at 30%. So we're still.
And they're building more ships. They're building more ships. The Navy fleet. There was something on 60 Minutes. I mean, they're.
You mean the U.S.? Yeah, they're building battleships, which are obsolete technology. Ukraine has the smartest technology, cheap robots, cheap drones. We're going to want to spend $1 billion, $1.5 billion on building these big old tubs of rust.
Trillion and a half.
Yeah.
$1.5 trillion. Wow, that's crazy.
Well, yeah, we're not going to spend the whole $1.5 trillion on one boat. No, but we're going to spend billions on obsolete weapon systems.
if Trump was, and let's throw this back to Ukraine now and strategy. I think that if Trump, I mean, first of all, let's just call it for what it is. I think anybody working in this administration right now is in a rock and a hard place. If the president comes in there and says we're going to war in Iran, or we're not going to provide weapons to Ukraine, or maybe Putin isn't a bad guy, which we were saying 5 years ago when this war began. Now, he is, sort of seeing an opportunity here. Could he bring an end to this war? Now, I don't know how he would do it.
Which one?
Ukraine,
Which war?
Ukraine war.
Trump?
And
What he has to do with this war, Steve? Let me ask you. I think he has the same chances to stop the war as you or Rick or Mark or myself.
As the president of the United States, and of course, as the leader of this country, I do believe that he could perhaps say, okay, let's go ahead and stop the fighting where they're stopping now. Let's force Russia into a surrender or a deal where we have security measures in place. Now, of course, it's not the deal you and I would want, because I would want Ukraine to retain all the territory. But the fact is, Russia is weakening every day. They've lost 500,000 troops. Their economy is in the tank. We could turn on the sanctions and put Putin out. There's even rumors about possible assassination attempts or getting Putin out of power, which has me concerned about what would a post-Putin Russia be like. Would it be worse? Would it be better?
But Steve, to your point, and all along those lines, and I think you raised this early this morning and everything along those lines, who would be the ones that would actually be able to talk to Trump and get him to go in that direction? We know Trump is surrounding himself with a lot of yes men. He doesn't have a Madeleine Albright. He doesn't have a Henry Kissinger. He doesn't have these kind of like folks that were actually going into the president's office and talking.
I hear from Admiral McRaven on podcasts I listen to, who's the head of the Navy SEALs, one of the most renowned people in the military, that this president just isn't listening to his military advisors.
Right.
When you're the president of the United States, you need to listen to your advisors about this war in Iran is not going to work, because they're not going to back down. They're always going to have a seat at the table as long as they have the power to develop a nuclear weapon. Pulverizing and bombing like this is going to do nothing. With the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, he's not a stupid guy. He was a U.S. senator. But what is he going to do as the Secretary of State? Go to his boss, the president? The president will fire him. The national security advisor. So the fact of the matter is, Mark, that's exactly the problem. Trump will listen to no one but himself. The only good news for the world is that there will be a new president in 2 years. Yeah. Now, will it be J.D. Vance? Will it be Rubio? Will it be Bashir? Will it be Newsom? I don't know who it's going to be, but at least it won't be the same way it's been going now, the way I'm looking at it.
Well, Trump is not thinking coherently. So he can't hold a thought in his head for very long before he's distracted by other stuff. And
he's definitely distracted, because
he
even
doesn't
yesterday
have a consistent worldview. So his thinking, to the extent that he can think anymore, is shaped by grievance and wishful thinking and trying to move the market. And we don't have, like, every previous president had some kind of worldview. Trump's worldview is shattered. His brain isn't great right.
It could be, guys, and Sasha, this might be something we never talked about. It could be that his mental competence, because of his age and his health issues, that he's simply not able to think and act like a United States president. And this could perhaps work in J.D. Vance's favor because he is so young. If he runs against someone older, this is why I like Bashir, because he is in his late 40s. It may be time to have a younger president. But the reality is the 25th Amendment, that's the only way to take him out is, plead, invoke the 25th. But then would it be any better because you'd have J.D. Vance in there? I think Vance, who knows, guys? This thing is, it's like watching a sci-fi thriller at this point, this presidency.
So the last time we had a really dumb president, maybe the dumbest president in history, was Warren Harding. And he only lasted 2.5 years before he died, from 1921 to 1923. And it was kind of a disaster, but it was a limited disaster because the U.S., we didn't have all the tech we have now. There was corruption aplenty. He had a terrible cabinet, but really what you could do in the 1920s doesn't compare to what an idiot in the White House can do right now in terms of damage.
And he's doing a lot of
it's
damage.
really, it's, yeah, he is.
He's doing a lot of
Well,
damage.
I think I'll end with it. It's a reality TV presidency. You do these disruptive things, so you get the news cycles 24/7, and we talk about this guy 7 days a week on every news show. So he's sucking the oxygen out of the room, and then he's going to anoint JD Vance, and then he's gonna try to do the same thing to JD Vance, and so they've, how's any president other than Kamala Harris going to get the name recognition across the country right now? That's a Democrat. Maybe Newsom.
It'll be maybe Newsom and maybe somebody like that. But I mean, he's doing some crazy stuff. I know yesterday he signed an executive order promoting his long-held but discredited theory that childhood vaccines should be spaced out into separate visits. So they're trying to space out these childhood vaccines, and this has been disproved that this needs to be done. And this is like a scientific consensus and decades of studies saying that it doesn't need to be done. But he and Robert Kennedy feel that it does need to be done, and they're talking about even though there's no links that have been found between vaccines and autism, but they've got folks in the like I said, a bunch of yes men.
Kennedy is insane.
Well, folks, I want to.
Okay.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry I interrupted so much. I can't see you as I'm talking, so
that's okay.
I'm gonna let you guys go. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be rude. I just couldn't see you because I didn't want to have a car accident.
All right, so freaking Kennedy is a lunatic. Trump is too dumb to know anything. 91% of U.S. kids have received, most of whom are now adults, have received the MMR vaccine, mumps, measles, and rubella. I think it takes 2 shots, I think, one and then another one a few months later. You get all 3 at once. The rate of complications is tiny. We've been using this for decades, and all of a sudden Robert Kennedy Jr. wants to dismantle that system, as well as making like every vaccine optional, as well as telling idiots that vaccines are more harmful than helpful. The latest thing is it's all over social media that the COVID vaccine caused 82% of pregnant women to have a miscarriage. Entire bullshit based on a math error. The actual statistic is 13%, which is the same rate that unvaccinated women have miscarriages. People have a lot of miscarriages. It's not a small percentage, but it is the same percentage regardless of whether you were vaccinated.
Rick, as much as I understand what you're saying, this message is not what will galvanize people for election and throw away the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans and take control. No. The message is very simple, which I already mentioned several times on these programs. The message is economic, financial inequality in the United States. It is that the billionaires are simply, through all kind of nice laws and ways of doing business, simply taking money away from people without people even recognizing it. People don't understand it. They pay their taxes, they're taking their paycheck. Let's see, they're making, say, $200,000 a year. Very few people, by the way, making $200,000 a year. 100, it's okay. But then you pay taxes from this $100,000 or $200,000, and the CEO or the president of the company where you're working, making this money, his paycheck is 150, maybe 200 times more than what you're making, and he's not producing of some kind of intellectual property or a product or whatever it might be. Not at all. It's just that the board of directors, I've heard this explanation. Well, board of directors of this company decided that this man has to take $10 million a year, $15 million, $25 million, or so on. Wow, board of directors. Board of directors is being paid by this company where you're working. So
Yeah, no, so I agree with you. The message should be Republicans are taking away your money and giving it to billionaires.
Mhm.
Period. They're taking away Social Security, Medicare. You're paying taxes, billionaires are not.
they're not, yeah, that's a problem that they're not paying taxes, because even if they're making $25 million a year, if they would pay their taxes without army of tax lawyers and tax lawyers and accountants and all that stuff, and they would simply pay their share of taxes, that would already make very different situation in the United States. But most of these people, they don't pay taxes, they avoid paying taxes, they evade taxes, they have all the army of tax consultants, lawyers, and whatever, and that is not something that you should continue to vote for.
Yeah, I agree.
True.
But
True.
That's a message. That's a winning message, because that people of all kinds of nobody, even Republicans, what's they going to say? Well, I think it's okay. Well, they're making $25 million. There's nothing we can do about it. I doubt that very much.
yep,
I'm
that's
tweeting
definitely-
that out right now as we're.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm tweeting out the GOP is taking away your money and purchasing power and giving it to billionaires.
Well,
Absolutely.
you know, there is the big bill that's getting ready to come out. I
The
think it's when they
billionaires
come back.
are not paying their fair taxes due
you know-
to the system of tax loopholes and the army of tax accountants, tax lawyers, and just name it. And this is absolutely incredible situation, which leads to even more economic inequality in the
But Sasha, it's about to get even worse, because I think when the Congress comes back, and you can check this on me, Rick, and everything. I think when they come back in August, they're supposed to be passing a law that's going to make it even less regulated, the crypto rules and the cryptocurrency and everything like that. So there's a new, and I've actually invited somebody to come in and talk to us about it on World Edition, and if not this week, next week, and we'll see if they respond back to me. But apparently, I think when they come back in session in August, there's supposed to be this new law that could impact this as well and everything like that. So
how it
this-
will benefit American people.
that's
How
my point.
American taxpayers will benefit from this new laws.
And that's my point, is that it won't impact us in a positive way and everything like that. So, but a lot of people aren't even paying attention to this new law that's about to come down and everything like that. So I'm trying to find the letter that I sent to the person so I can explain a little bit more to you and Rick about what this law is doing. So the crypto says, once back from the August recess, senators will vote on what they're calling the Clarity Act, a bill that set a legal structure for most cryptocurrency activity in the United States. If passed, the legislation would mark a major victory, they're saying, for Donald Trump and the cryptocurrency industry,
because
while reshaping how
Trump
digital
and his-
assets are regulated by federal agencies. So I'm trying to get back
Trump
to
and his
all the coming.
kids are running half a dozen crypto scams
Right.
and pulling in hundreds of millions of dollars from suckers. Yes. And yeah, of course they're going to try to do legislation to avoid any regulation,
Right.
to avoid any penalties, to have to pay back any of the money they're taking from idiots dumb enough to invest in them.
Tell
Yeah,
me, let's see a worker has a lunch break. Can he buy a hamburger with Coca-Cola with cryptocurrency? I never heard about that.
There's a couple of,
There's
I told
no
you before,
use for people, for American taxpayers, there is no use whatsoever of the cryptocurrency.
Well, there are a couple of places that accept crypto, including like you
It
can.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yes, there are a couple of places. So what? Majority of people, 99.9999%, cannot buy anything with a cryptocurrency. So why should we care about all these millionaires that are making new rules for themselves? Why should we care?
Apparently, I just looked it up. I just looked up McDonald's. It says to buy McDonald's with crypto, you can follow these methods: either crypto refills, where you can purchase McDonald's gift cards using Bitcoins and other cryptocurrencies, and this allows you to use crypto indirectly at McDonald's. And similarly to crypto refills, you can buy McDonald's gift cards with Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, allowing you to enjoy McDonald's meals using something called CoinGate. So either using crypto refills or CoinGate, you can technically buy something from McDonald's if you want
Well,
to.
with all due respect, I doubt that there are enough people who would prefer to pay crypto for their hamburger and Coca-Cola instead of credit card or cash or anything. I just don't believe that.
No, I agree with you on that because most people are. I mean, we're in the credit system now. A lot of people don't carry cash with them at all. So the majority of people are probably buying their food and their items using the credit card, which you talked about on World
Absolutely.
Edition earlier. Because most people
Which
don't
will
even.
allow credit cards to charge 22% interest plus late charges for a non-payment on time. And that is, as I said earlier today, it's a part of GDP. So when you're saying that American GDP is growing, it's going here and there. So part of that GDP is credit cards who are charging 22% and late charges. Remember that.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. Well, this has been our
We
live.
talked about it this morning that people are paying 1.25 trillion, Americans are, in credit card fees a year.
So let the credit cards finance Pentagon to this trillion and a half dollars. Leave American taxpayers out of it. So the Pentagon will get their money, they will get their steak and lobster dinners, and it will continue to drain American people. As I said earlier in the Ukrainian show, unfortunately, I don't have the YouTube link. But what I said there is that the reason that American refused to give Ukraine license to build interceptors, they knew that Ukrainians will not only build interceptors, they will also advance them. They also make them much cheaper. And Pentagon will use their license to print money because Ukraine will make the same, probably even better weapons, which will be so much cheaper.
An interceptor costs $4 to $5 million to make.
Yeah, Ukrainians make it cost 10 times cheaper.
Yeah, the Ukraine is using weapons that cost between high-tech weapons, drones, robots that cost between $600 and $40,000.
That's right.
Compared to $5 million for one of these missiles.
No doubt about that. No.
And what is the difference between this money? It's all being put upon American taxpayers. Here is a wonderful missile. It cost $5 million. Same Ukrainian missile would cost.
So the head of the Department of War was caught on video yesterday. Hegseth, his nose was running. He went like this, and then he pushed his snot up into his hair. A guy, by the time you're 8 years old, you learn not to do that. And the guy who's in charge of $1.5 trillion it hasn't learned not to put snot in his hair.
Welcome to hell. That's what's happening in the United States of America. That's horrible. I never
It's
could
horrible,
imagine.
but I know one of the other points that Ivan made, because I was listening the whole time, even though we were having those issues and everything like that, is the notion that there's a lot of places that the oligarchs were having that were like fancy places, because I did hear him talking about, like, I think it was and you can correct me, but it was like not a plaza, but like this fancy house that he went to when he was a kid, that was like where the Russian oligarchs were living at that time. That was definitely kind of, I think it was a former sanitarium, if I remember him talking about
Yes,
it
that's
correctly.
right. Yeah, that's what like he was saying to us.
Yes.
So I think it's time to get from talking about this and Hexet and whoever else. You have to work on a real message to American people, which will be supported not only by Democrats, by independents as well, and some Republicans, believe it or not.
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
you
so
are properly
we're
correct.
not even in it's said that most voters, about half of voters, don't even pay attention to the issues until 3 weeks before the
Yeah.
election. So we still have 2 months to go before that happens. So when half of the voters start paying attention, will they look around and be appalled at what's been going on? Even without them paying attention, Trump's approval is at the lowest it's ever been.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because Trump is pretty good, either through luck or bullshit, at managing to drive up his approval in the week before voting.
So that's why, Rick, maybe slowly your message, well crafted and formulated, will have to start be spread, and not 3 weeks before election, but say maybe 6, 8 weeks before election. But then it will augment its sound and will become accepted and will have a decisive effect on the electorate.
Can we beat the bullshit? I just saw today this guy, Abdul al-Said, who won his primary and who's being attacked for being a socialist. Somebody was on Fox News saying he hates football. He's a weirdo. It's crazy bullshit, because the guy, a big guy, he was captain of his high school football team.
Yeah, but they were trying to paint him.
I heard myself his interview on CNN on Sunday morning with Jack Tapper. I never heard any anti-Semitic or anti-democratic or any kind of weird sounds that would be offensive to me. No. He was a man who was reasonable. And the only thing he reiterated, one message, that Democrats, while being in power, they immediately start impeachment procedure against, first of all, Trump, but many also of his cabinets for whatever they did to United States of America. That's another message that could fly very well with Democrats and independents, I'm pretty sure.
I don't know. Some people are saying we impeach immediately. Some people are saying first investigate, because Trump's already been impeached twice, double.
So make it 3 times. But
it has no consequence, because the impeachment is 2 parts. You vote in the House, and then you move it to the Senate for the trial. So the impeachment is calling for the trial. Then you put it in the Senate, you have a trial, and you need 2/3 of the Senate to vote guilty before you can kick him out.
Yeah. You're right, Rick. But you see, what's the problem with all that? And what's very important to understand, it's not just a result. Okay, he's impeached. Now he's removed out of the office. No, he's not removed out of the office. There are not enough votes in Senate. No. The process itself, when all he is doing will be analyzed under microscope, and he will have to get depositions. And people who were involved with him and supported him will have to go and give depositions and so on. So the process in this case may even more important be than result.
I don't know. I mean, Clinton was impeached for lying about getting blowjobs.
Okay.
He lied to the FBI. So they impeached him. After the trial was over, he was more popular than before, because people thought that he hadn't been treated fairly in the impeachment. So I don't think Trump will be more popular, but among his base, everybody will be there just persecuting him.
I think in this next election, there will be a destruction of his base. His base has no longer motivation to support him at all costs. There is no message that Trump or Republicans bringing to this election that would electrify people. Say, oh yeah, he's great. Look at what he's talking about. It will improve our lives. Let's vote for him. I just don't see it. I don't see the message.
I don't know, because we've had 10 years of Trump, and I'm afraid of the extent to which his base will just buy anything. There's a woman on Twitter. Every time I post something, she writes, "You are so brainwashed. How can you believe this? The media is lying to you." And I don't respond to her because on top of what she says, she's also a flat earther. She believes there's been a conspiracy for thousands of years to hide that the earth is shaped like a cookie. And it's like, if that is his base, if they're that crazy, even if only 10% are that crazy, like, I don't know what you do with them.
But you're following his rating, his approval rating.
Yeah.
So that's not something what shows that he is so popular and he is so well supported. I just don't see it that way.
I don't know. I hope you're right. But, he shouldn't have been elected this second time. There was so much evidence that he was going to be frickin' terrible. And of course, I think he's outdoing most people's expectations for terrible. But
well, we'll see. Election is not too far away, and we'll see how it all works. But I think the message has to be formulated and spread around probably earlier than 3 weeks before the election. It takes a little bit of time for people to get the message, to get used to the message, to understand the message.
Yeah, I tweet out a little bit. Not that many people watch me or listen to me on X anymore, but I don't know. And if enough people, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we have to try anyway.
You definitely have to try it. It's been a great conversation. I did try to get some of the points in from our other show and everything like that. I hope you noticed that, Sasha, and everything like that, so that we can at least get some of the points made. But we'll definitely be back tomorrow with World Edition and Modern Investment, and whatever they had going on, they fixed. So hopefully they won't have any more glitches. But I did try to at least get some of those points that you made, because I was taking notes. You don't know that, but I do sometimes take notes during the time of the show, either mentally or written down and everything like that. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
No
See you
problem.
tomorrow.
Bye, everybody. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.